What are the qualifications for recognition of a state at international law?
Recognition of a state is primarily a political decision.
At international law, it's a political decision to recognise a state. There must be some sort of legal definition that we use to determine whether something is a state.
There are some, traditional criteria that are relevant, but the ultimate decision of whether to recognise is a political one.
What are the traditional criteria?
They are a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states.
So my understanding is those are the criteria set out under the Montevideo Convention. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they're not traditional criteria, they're something that's set out under a convention.
But a decision whether to recognise is a political decision.
Does Palestine have agreed borders which define its territory?
I think I can't give legal advice on the application of those criteria to the committee. I think I would point the committee to...
It's a physical question, not a legal question. Does Palestine have agreed borders which define its territory?
I would refer that to DFAT.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
Does Palestine have a single government in effective control of its territory?
Senator, I think this is in fact legal advice because it's the application of criteria, so it would be giving you advice on legal considerations.
I think these questions are in relation to factual matters, though, not legal advice that you may or may not have provided the government. The question is, does Palestine have agreed borders and do they have a single government? I would have thought that was a pretty straightforward, factual yes or no answer.
So, Senator, our involvement is with the Office of International Law as international legal advisors. Ms Sheehan's directed you to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Okay. Did the Office of International Law give advice to the government on whether Australia's recognition of a Palestinian state was legitimate?
We have given advice to government on the issue of recognition.
When was that advice provided, Ms Sheehan?
We need to take that on notice, I think, because...
Yeah, I think we might need to take on notice the precise dates. There would have been probably multiple occasions on which we provided advice.
Multiple occasions on which you provided advice?
Yes.
Over the scope of many years.
Many years. How many years, Ms Jones?
I think in my time in the department, this issue has come up numerous times, probably over the last 15 years.
Over the last 15 years?
But look, that's actually, I should be careful. I wouldn't be precise, but it's come up multiple times.
Okay, well, I think it would be useful for the committee to at least know how many times you've had to provide advice on this matter since the Labor government have been in power. And I'd hope that it would be relatively straightforward for some official here to provide that information to the committee before the end of this section of the program today. So when it became time for the government to make this specific recognition and this specific change in relation to recognition of Palestine, could you at least provide me with the date on which the Office of International Law gave advice to the government recently?
We'll take that on notice.
Okay. What's the capital of Palestine?
Senator, we can't comment on that.
Because you don't know or because you're legally unsure?
Well, I think it's not a matter for this department, Senator.
Do you know what the capital of Israel is?
Senator, I don't think that's a matter within the Attorney General's responsibilities.
Was the Office of International Law asked for advice on any of these questions that I have asked you today?
We've agreed to take on notice the dates of advice we've given.
Was the Office of International Law ever asked to provide advice on whether a state can be recognised on a conditional basis?
Senator, I think that's starting to get into the content of advice that we wouldn't comment on.
Okay, generally speaking, can recognition of a state ever be conditional?
Senator, that would constitute legal advice.
I'm trying to figure out if I can phrase that in a way where it wouldn't constitute legal advice. I mean, going back to the evidence that you provided that apparently recognition of a state is a political question, but there is a legal framework under the Montevideo Convention that we utilise to make that determination. Does the Montevideo Convention allow for conditional recognition of a state?
I think that would be providing legal advice to the committee.
Okay. On the 11th of August, when the Prime Minister announced that Australia would recognise Palestine, he outlined a series of commitments which Australia had obtained in the course of the government's decision to recognise Palestine. The Prime Minister said, "Our government has made it clear that there can be no role for the terrorists of Hamas in any future Palestinian state. This is one of the commitments Australia has sought and received from President Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. The PA has reaffirmed it recognises Israel's right to exist in peace and security. It's committed to demilitarise and to hold general elections. It is pledged to abolish the system of payments to the families of prisoners and martyrs and promise broader reform of governance, financial transparency in the education system, including international oversight to guard against the incitement of violence and hatred. These detailed and significant commitments have been given even greater weight by the Arab League's unprecedented demand for Hamas to end its rule in Gaza and surrender its weapons to the Palestinian authorities. But those commitments have no bearing on whether Palestine is recognised as a state legally. Would that be correct?"
I think the government's decision was to recognise the state of Palestine, and it's now done so.
Yes. But the Prime Minister outlined a series of conditions that he, or commitments that he had sought and seemingly obtained. But the reality is, when it comes to that legal recognition, there's no way of guaranteeing that those commitments would be seen through.
I think what my understanding of what the Prime Minister was setting out was what considerations the government was taking into account in its decision, which it's now taken to recognise.
But when we're trying to, when the government is going through the process of recognising that state, I mean, those commitments are all sort of future-looking things. There's no legal way of guaranteeing that those things have to occur before recognition can take place. Is that correct?
I think I would just repeat my earlier answer that they were political considerations, and it's ultimately a political decision to decide to recognise.
The Prime Minister obviously said in that quote that I just read out that Hamas can play no role in the future of a Palestinian state. If in due course Palestine holds elections and Hamas is elected, can we revoke recognition of Palestinian statehood legally?
I think that would amount to providing legal advice to the committee.
You can't tell us whether or not Australia would be recognising a terrorist state if Hamas is elected the government of Palestine?
Senator, there's a number of hypotheticals there, and we would not generally respond to hypotheticals here at Estimates.
Can the department confirm that the recognition of Palestine as a state is a legal question that is not tied to the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Senator, I think Machine has said a couple of times that it's ultimately a political decision that the government has taken. I'm not sure we can provide any further commentary.
Can the department confirm that recognition of Palestine as a state is a legal question that doesn't prevent violence, doesn't get aid through and doesn't release hostages?
Well, I think just I have to reiterate the point that Mr. Machine have made, that ultimately it is a political decision.
Fair to say that's a pretty frustrating series of responses from the officials today. I mean, Minister, the truth is that this decision to recognise Palestine wasn't about achieving peace in the Middle East. It wasn't about the situation on the ground. It was around, frankly, satisfying your party's membership base, which I know you feel very strongly about this issue. Isn't that right?
I would completely disagree with you, Senator. And I think it was about peace and trying to bring a peaceful resolution to the Middle East. For the whole of my life, there's been conflict in the Middle East, and the events of 2 years ago tomorrow, of course, were just another terrible indication of what's been happening in that region for far too long. A group of countries, including the United Kingdom, France, Canada, so people, countries that we often identify with internationally, made similar decisions that one way to progress the issue of peace in the Middle East, particularly in these most difficult of circumstances, was to provide recognition to the Palestinians. And that decision, as you've been questioning the officials, was made earlier this year. I know it would be disappointing from the Coalition's point of view if peace did occur in the Middle East, because you'd then have nothing to with respect, Senator.
With respect.
Yeah, well, with respect, I was answering the question, and you made allegations that this whole issue is about domestic Australian internal Labor Party politics. This is not about any of those things. This is about trying to provide a peaceful settlement, which certainly this government wants to see in the Middle East. Nobody wants to see the fighting continue.
Of course.
Nobody, more than the Labor Party, would like to see an end to the conflict in that region, and that includes the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. So to the extent that, as a government, we can influence international events, then we want to stake our claim to a peaceful resolution of this issue. And if, as reports are already suggesting, that there may be a peace deal in the next few days, nothing would give the Labor Party, nothing would give the Prime Minister, nothing would give me greater satisfaction to know that something that an Australian government had done had contributed to the peaceful outcome in the Middle East.
Minister.
Well, I know. I would say the same thing about the Greens. Once there's peace in the Middle East, once peace is achieved in the Middle East, of course, you have nothing further to contribute to this debate. Both the Greens and the Coalition are in the same position. The Labor Party wants to see a peaceful resolution. The Labor Party wants to see the Labor Party wants to see a peaceful resolution.
Senators, can I just give us a bit of a reset?
To the issues.
Sorry, Minister, can I get you to pause for a second? Senators, can we just take a breath? I want to allow Senator Chandler to finish her final couple of questions, and I will encourage senators not to interject, please. Senator Chandler.
Thank you very much, Chair. The problem I have with what we've discussed here this afternoon is that the evidence of the department was that it was a political decision to recognise Palestinian statehood, but then a series of questions around what conditions may or may not have to have been satisfied to agree on statehood were effectively legal advice. So I'm just trying to understand how the decision to recognise statehood was made in terms of whether the government sought advice from you to say, legally, can we do this? And you said, legally, yes, we can. Or you said, legally, yes, we can't. Or you said, legally, things have changed at this point in time. But I don't think we can say that it's a purely political decision and then for the department to say, but we provide legal advice on that because, you can't have both in an effect.
So I think that is consistent, Senator, in the sense that it is ultimately a decision for government. We've taken on notice to indicate the dates on which we've given advice, but there are some indicia, but ultimately it is a matter for government to make that decision.
Minister, can you answer my questions about Palestine having agreed borders which define its territory, or Palestine having a single government in effective control of its territory?
I can answer what I know about the Middle East, but I think it would be more appropriate if you've got questions of that nature that we either refer it to the Attorney General herself, or for that matter to the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
Authorised by Claire Chandler, Liberal Party, Richmond.